But before we get to that, we're going to cut now to the French president, who is speaking at that artificial intelligence conference here in the French capital. Take a listen.
And thank you for sketching out the outcomes and the Paris AI actions. And with our friend Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who coordinated the work with us, we trust that they will be a solid basis for the future. We have some 10 commitments, around 100 decisions, initiatives and coalitions on subjects which are greatly diverse in range and which will make it possible to tackle the challenges raised in the course of this work. Obviously, I can't sum up everything that's been said in the course of the summit, but I would like to point out 3 key take-home messages. First, we're all convinced that this is a time of innovation and acceleration. And this is why in the course of the discussions, and we've seen it today, that we have this dilemma of what's positive, what's negative, whether we're afraid or feeling there's hope. And we'll see that the actions will speak for themselves. We know that we want to be involved in this. We realize that this is competition, and we are decided to do this because this is a matter of sovereignty, and sovereignty for all participants. So we're living a moment of great innovation and extreme speed. It's a time of acceleration of choices and of investments. In the course of the summit, we announced 109 billion in private funding for artificial intelligence. That's from France and international sources. And we just heard 200 billion from the European Union. And so we can see that. Well, we know what's happening in the United States. We know there's been great success in China, and we've had an announcement from our friends in the Gulf about the major investments there. There are investments in India, Canada, and so many others here today. And we know that the race is definitely being run. That's the first thing. But we have to realize that we're all involved in running the race. And the figures that I just gave you show you. And I would like to say how pleased we are that this is a real moment of awakening and ambition to be involved in this in Europe. We want to invest in talent, training younger generations, have more and more positions for research and at university level. We want to invest in data and the consolidation of data, and we need to have a framework for accessing the data. We want to invest in data centers, and the President of the Commission announced the program for setting up a data center in Europe for public research and startups. And we announced a number of massive-scale data centers funded by the private sector in France, and we made the announcement here at the summit. And the strong point here is there's real ability to have sustainable, low-carbon energy sources, and this is where the French model of civil nuclear power is a real strong point. And together we decided to accelerate work on applications. We've seen this has to be applied science, applications in mobility, in defense and security, and there are a number of large groups in France and international countries have made announcements and signed up contracts with new players in artificial intelligence, with new partnerships, grasping the opportunities here. And we are all convinced that artificial intelligence will be an opportunity for us all to learn better, to have better healthcare, to have better work, and to have a better life within our societies. And this is a society of competition, innovation, and sovereignty. But this is a period, as I said, of innovation and acceleration. The second message is how we can build up trust and to get away from this dilemma of risks on the one side and opportunity on the other, thinking that the only option is regulations which might be an obstacle to innovations. I think that the challenge we are all up against is that governments have to take action, but also civil society needs to act, and private enterprise does too. Major investors need to too. We need to know how we can have trust in artificial intelligence and the use thereof, because that will be the key part of its success. Because if we can't trust it, then we won't have artificial intelligence adopted around the world or spread around the world. And we'll see that in a few years' time there will be lots of our fellow citizens saying, we don't want AI in our country. It's a source of problems and negative impact on our lives. Now, what do we need for establishing such a climate of trust? First, you have to have fair and open access. And the question of access is of decisive importance. We need to have wide-ranging access, and we've seen this internationally with players from Asia-Pacific, Latin America, and other regions of the world. And we need to have access for all continents and all countries. And we've seen this with Prime Minister Modi. This is the third path. We don't want a system of those who are in power and the rest of vassals. We want to have this serving the entire planet. And I don't believe that the world will be divided between the global north and the global south, just looking at one another, because if we want to have trust in artificial intelligence, we have to make sure there is equitable access to these innovations in all continents. And this is a challenge for both public authorities and the private sector. And, of course, this is a challenge in our societies, too. We must not let a divide be established between the older generation and younger generations, or in certain parts of our countries, with differences in access to artificial intelligence. Then the next question is the quality of the data. If we want to trust artificial intelligence, we have to have greater and more consolidated quality data. And that way, we will have trust in them and they can be certified. And we want to have models, we want to have open access, but it has to be multiple access. We're all different. You can see it just looking around the auditorium here. And the example we saw from Prime Minister Modi earlier with the left hand and the right hand, we can see the different models. We want open source models and multiple sorts which reflect our diversity, which look like us. And that is why open source and multiple models and opening up databases for the training of such models and the diversity of that and the transparency of algorithms are key elements to establish trust in artificial intelligence. We also want to have a proper respect for privacy. We've heard this in discussions. And we are here in a world where data is so open and we can accelerate innovation with it, but there has to be proper protection of privacy. And so we need to have a framework to establish trust so that each citizen has the assurance that their privacy is protected. We want a trust framework so that we can make a distinction between deep fakes and proper information. We want a framework that will protect our authorities from cyber attacks and means that we can have a calm environment to work with AI. We want a framework to have proper respect for creativity. And each person creating something has their rights. You get authors' rights, copyright, and so on for artists, reporters, writers, and so on. And we want to have a situation where artificial intelligence is not used for mass control, but we have to have a proper law and order in our environments. We have to have proper arrangements because artificial intelligence needs so much energy, and yet we want to protect our planet and biodiversity. So we have to foster artificial intelligence which will find low-carbon electricity and more frugal models which will make it possible for us to use less energy. Now, what I'm sketching out here are what we could call the commons or the pillars, and they're not other people's problems, and they shouldn't be seen as a problem which innovators are just referring to someone else who would have to deal with them. These are inbuilt problems. They are part and parcel of artificial intelligence, and this is what means that we will be able to trust or not trust artificial intelligence when it becomes part of our lives, our countries, and our our population, and we need to have that so that there can be international order. So this concept of trust and some of the basic paradigms that I've just mentioned are the framework that we need and must work with. We've launched the first coalitions, and we have concrete actions. We've got the current AI Foundation, which is a response, and we've got 400 million euros, which have already been committed, and France is going to be contributing some 100 million euros, and I would urge you all to be part of this. And you could say it's a public-private partnership, and it will be an answer to this question of trust. And then there's the question of data. We need to have the trust so that we know what type of data there is, what security they have, and what quality the data is. We need to have sustainable AI, and that's going to be part of the whole question of trust, and that's going to give us transparency so that public and private players can be involved. We've also decided on observatories for both social issues and energy issues, and this is the framework which means we'll be able to look at issues such as climate and also accessibility and cover of access to artificial intelligence. So these are the foundations that we've set next to the acceleration so that AI can become become a source of trust. And basically, it will be what we could call shared or common order. And this brings me to my last argument, and this is that we must defend our way of life, a multilateral way of life, a multiple way of expressing artificial intelligence. 7 years ago, with Prime Minister Trudeau, under the auspices of the G7, which Canada chaired, we launched the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence. And it's now housed with the OECD, and we can see the dialogue. There are some 44 countries, there are 44 countries at the moment, will be some 60 in the very near future. And we are working on standards. There are standards with players from different backgrounds and different cultures. The United Nations has the digital compact, the Global Digital Compact, and we've got the Secretary General here mentioned it, and we've got UNESCO, the Francophone Organization, the Council of Europe, and their different areas have worked on this, and we know that these are key organizations, and we can see that in these different organizations, as we can see in this summit here, that we have international governance of artificial intelligence. And this means that on the basis of actions and coalitions which we have now launched, will make it possible for us to consolidate the elements needed for us to have trustworthy artificial intelligence at this period of acceleration and innovation, and we will be able to set the rules, because we do need these rules. We need it for AI to move forward. This is not being wary of artificial intelligence. It's not running counter to innovation, but it's looking to the future so that we can have an international area where we will avoid our efforts being fragmented. So these are the ideas that I wanted to share with you. And we believe in innovation, we believe in acceleration, we believe in investment, and we also want to have AI which we can consider trustworthy and which will unite the international community. And I would like to conclude with some words of thanks to all of you who have worked on this and the foundations of this joint weather. I would like to thank Anne Bouvereau, the special envoy for this summit, and she did the work on all 5 continents there. Thank you to her and her wonderful team, Martin Tisney, Sanat Koussel, Roxana Vasa, Guillaume Poupin, Henri Verdier, Axel Médez, Mermébine, and Chloé Goupin, who is the Secretary General of the summit, which has been perfectly organized. Thank you to the ministers, and thank you to the Grand Palais, the Palais de la Découverte, which hosted us here. And thank you one and all for being here. And in conclusion, I would like to invite my friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, to come up and say a few words and to make a major announcement. Prime Minister.
Friends, today's discussions have brought one thing. There is unity in vision and unity in purpose across stakeholders. I welcome the decision to set up the AI Foundation at the Council for Sustainable AI. I congratulate France and my dear friend President Macron for these initiatives and assure our full support. We must also make the global partnership for AI truly global in nature. It should be more inclusive of the global South and its priorities, concerns, and needs. To build on the momentum of this Action Summit, India would be happy to host the next summit. Thank you.
Well, we just heard from Emmanuel Macron then at that artificial intelligence summit here in Paris. He said that 3 key messages came out of the summit. The first, that it's a time for innovation and extreme acceleration. The second is that the global community needs to focus on how to build trust, which he says is a key part of its success. And finally, the third conclusion, according to Emmanuel Macron from this summit, is the importance of international governance. The Indian Prime Minister spoke after Emmanuel Macron. He announced the creation of the AI Foundation and Council of Sustainable AI. Modi also calling for a global partnership on the technology that would be more inclusive of the global South's priorities and concerns. He concluded by saying that India would be happy to host the world's next summit on AI.